Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. First of all, let me to thank the organizers that invited me. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to speak here and give you my perspective how to adapt our forests to climate change. When I was thinking about the topic of my presentation, I asked one provoking question. Is climate change only a serious threat or an opportunity not to be missed? When we look at problems of forests in my country, in the Czech Republic, it seems clear. Climate change brings a serious problem and threat to our forests. On the other hand, I would say that the change in nature conditions also represents an opportunity. Opportunity to accelerate processes that have been relatively slow so far, an opportunity to use these changes to improve our forests, forest management, to improve fulfillment of forest services of our forests. As was mentioned in the first presentation, I think that there is no doubt that a change in nature conditions is taking place. As you can see on this picture, nature conditions are changing, especially in terms of temperature, air temperature. So here is in the Czech Republic statistically significant increase over 130 years. The trend in precipitation is not conclusive, but again, as was mentioned, the problem in terms of impact on forest ecosystems is drought periods. We can calculate different indices which characterized drought periods or drought seasons. One is used in this figure. So this is SPEI index. And you can see that from the 1980 we can find some drought periods, but I think that last or most recent period is exceptional in its length and also in intensity. And as you can see from the graph above this index, there is a very good relationship or correlation between drought season and also bark beetle harvesting. In the Czech Republic is country where in last year we are facing the huge bark beetle calamity, and it very good correspondence with drought period, which was started in 2015. But it's not only problem of the Czech Republic. It was reported that tree mortality take dramatic forms with over 100 million cubic meters dead trees in Europe after summer drought in 2018, which we recalculate this situation and economic loss. It is approximately 3.5 billion euros. It's clear that climate change intensity is dependent on other aspects. Typically, in the Czech Republic, climate change and forest ecosystem is synergistically increased due to the altered species composition of forest in the Czech Republic. You can see the first graph, which show us the result from the Forest National Inventory. And green color represents proportion of Norway spruce in our country. And when we compare it with the natural composition, the proportion of spruce is 4 times higher than in comparing to natural composition. I think it's the other factor that adverse effect is forest aging. The second graph shows us distribution and proportion of age classes in Czech forests. During 20th century, there has also been a significant increase in rotation period from 90 years in 1930 to around 150 years in 2018. And this increase has been further reflected in age structure of our forest, of course. And this aging of forest is among the factors that significantly affect their health, vigor, and stability. So according to some research which were done on this topic, extent on salvage felling in stands older than 120 years is 20% higher than in stands age 100 to 120 and almost 50% higher than in stands age from 80 to 100 years. So I would say that the problems of forest management can therefore be seen much broadly. So current focus of silviculture in the conditions, specifically in the Czech Republic, is defined by changed tree species composition, changed spatial and age structure, and favorable growth conditions, of course. A long-term anthropogenic load in our history in the second half of 20th century was time where Czech Republic was famous by the highest air pollution in the world. So it still visible on the state of forest soils. And last important fact is the change of social requirements imposed on forests. Again, it was mentioned in first lecture, climate projections suggests that the trend will continue, which will further affect on health, productivity, as well as species composition of forests. As you can see on these projections, which were made by Institute for Global Change Investigation in the Czech Republic. There are many researchers and research activities which were and are oriented on forecasting how this climate change will affect forests in Europe. One example is the paper published by Professor Hanewinkel. Other one, for example, potential shift of biome expansions if the predicted increase in temperature occurs without increase of precipitation. So I think that the key question for forestry now is how to respond to these changes. We are not able to stop this trend, but we must react on these climate changes, changes in environmental conditions, and climate smart forestry is maybe one possible solution. A comprehensive approach and strategy to increase benefits, climate benefits from forests. And the approach builds on 3 pillars, as you can see on this slide. One is oriented on mitigation, so reducing or removing greenhouse gas emission to mitigate climate change. Second one is oriented on adaptation, forest management, to build resilient forest. And last one, active forest management aiming to sustainably increase productivity and provide all functions or services that forest can provide. We must, if we find a solution for this complex problem, it's necessary to include in our thinking all essential processes that are occur in forest ecosystems, and we must try to describe the links between them as accurately as possible. And crucial issue, by my opinion, is the interaction of tree species and the environment on which they develop. And silviculture interventions, silviculture measures aim to induce adequate growth response of tree species by changing stand environment, and thus to positively affect quality and quantity of wood production, soil environment, species composition, and other factors. In the scientific literature, we can find three different strategies for the future forest management and the stand level. Now we are going to the stand level, how to adapt our forest stand. First strategy is conservation. Conservation of forest structure. So we can say resistance support, maintaining unchanged forest structure functions by improving forest protection measures. This approach, of course, can increase the risk of catastrophic loss of forest, but may enable to achieve the original management targets. I think that in today's situation, this concept only is possibly used if there are low adverse impact of climate change, high stand resistance to climate change, and also maybe high stand age. The second strategy is active adaptation. And active adaptation could be divided into two parts. One is support of resilience, increase resilience of forest stand. So actively promote some changes in stand structure with a priority to return the original forest structure and functions in past disturbance management. Or conversion. Conversion is attractive if we have a very high risk of deterioration forest stand. So priority is adaptation to new conditions, to new natural conditions by changing structure, species, and genetic composition. And last approach is so-called passive adaptation. It means that use only spontaneous adaptation processes in terms, for example, natural succession or natural species migration. So this approach could be optimal if we have low importance of forest stand for economic point of view and maybe for ecological functioning. I would say that if we are looking for inspiration, how to adapt our forest stand, logical starting point is close to nature silviculture, close to nature forest management, because in many aspects, in many parameters, meets the adaptation principles. And I involve in my presentation concept developed by Karl Geyer in the second half of 19th century, because this idea was based on cultivation of mixed forests. Or the second one, selective forest idea, because this idea is based on maximizing of forest structure, differentiation. So at the rest time of my presentation, I would like to briefly recapitulate the main principles for adaptation of forest management on the stand level. The first one, and maybe the most important, is increased tree species richness. Mixed stand are slightly more resistant to disturbance events and more resilient to disturbances. Species have different tolerance to climate factors, so mixtures provide hedge against uncertain future conditions. So it's clear our strategy in silviculture in establishing of new stands is to establish mixed stand, at least composed from 3 main species with proportion higher than 20%, if it is possible according to site condition. It's clear that 3 species are able differently fulfill functions in forest stand. For example, I involve in my presentation comparing of spruce and oak regarding to transpiration. Because one essential function of trees and forest stand in landscape is to ensure thermoregulation through transpiration. Because transpiration transforms a significant part of energy coming from the sun. And it's very important for thermoregulation. And when we compare spruce and oak, it's clear that oak is more efficient species than Norway spruce. So it's clear that in mixture of our stands, broadleaf species must play the most important role in future forests. The second adaptation principle is increased structural diversity. And it's clear because structurally diverse forests exhibit higher overall resistance. And we can use different silviculture measures to reach these adaptation principles. We can use different silviculture system. We can try oriented on selection forest or group shelter wood system, or we can apply crown thinning approaches in even age stands, as you can see in this picture, which was taken from spruce even age stands after application of crown thinning oriented on increased diversity of forest stand. Maintain and increase genetic variation within tree species is other adaptation principles, because it's necessary to maintain and maybe increase this diversity, and how to manage. One is enrich existing population with other provenance, especially for species with small population variation inside in population. Natural regeneration is a very good tool how to increase genetic variation of forest stand. Assisted migration is an important factor which can positively affect variation, genetic variation of our forest stand. I mentioned one part of the strategy for adaptation to climate change. There is a need to revise existing way to regulation, introduce tree species, because it's also important task how to incorporate some promising non-native species in our forest stand to increase stability, adaptability, and as well as an example of Douglas fir also and productivity of our forests. And last three principles: increase resistance in individual trees. Again, the crucial rule can play thinning, heavy crown thinning, support long crowns, increase growing space of individual trees. Replace high risk stand, it is close to conversion principle, and keep average growing stocks low. And how? We can start with the regeneration in lower age, and we can apply heavy thinning to start regeneration earlier. And maybe conclusion of my presentation. So I think that it's clear that change in natural as well as social conditions is a phenomenon that has and will continue to have a major impact on forest and forest management. On the other hand, forests play a very important role in mitigating impact of climate change, sequestration of carbon in biomass in soil. And among terrestrial ecosystem, forestry species and specifically their stand play a crucial role in thermoregulation of the landscape, because they are able efficiently transforming inside and solar energy through transpiration. And adaptive management is one of the most important challenges for forestry today. But silviculture must be flexible, variable, and oriented on promotion of forest resilience. And in practical silviculture, it is recommended to apply aforementioned principles which should be applied depending on concrete state, stand conditions and site conditions. So thank you for your attention.